Welcome, everybody. I'm Dr. Rob Covell. I'm glad you're here with us for week 3 of the Constitutional Christians course. And today we're going to learn about the U.S. Constitution. Thank you for being here. Welcome, everybody. We're going to jump right into our session this afternoon. I'd like to pray before we do. Father, I want to thank you so much for everybody that's here. Lord, we thank you for the ability to learn. Lord, to open our minds and to learn about the ways that we could be involved in this great world that you created for us. Well, Father, we pray that you would give us grace to learn today as we learn about the U.S. Constitution, and that, Lord, you would move our hearts to make great change in this nation. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, beloved, we are going to do a short study or a high view of the U.S. Constitution and its 27 amendments. In no way is this an in-depth study on the U.S. Constitution, but it's basically a high view. And I believe it's important for us to understand the basics of the U.S. Constitution because it guarantees certain things about our quality of life in America. If we've noticed over the last 2 weeks, we've learned that government is in place to protect our rights. Our rights do not come from the state. We learned that our rights come from God, and that God is the author of life, and that the U.S. Constitution and the U.S. form of government was designed so that Christian people could live in a land of blessing and economic prosperity for our children, and that we would have this founding form, this Republican form of government that would guarantee us the best possible outcome for generation after generation of Christians. The government and the state determine how we live, don't they? All of us are subject to laws. We walk out the door and we get in our cars, and there's speed limit laws. There's laws about all kinds of things. We stop at the red light. We give the right of way at the stop sign. And then other things. Some of us have to show up for jury duty from time to time. We have to comply with, regulations. We pay a bunch of taxes. So government really determines how we live, I think, in a lot of ways. And government and the state exert its authority on U.S. citizens and non-citizens alike. And if we don't understand the nature or the type of government the U.S. Constitution grants, then those that govern us can violate our rights that they're sworn to defend. And so that's why it's important for us to learn about the U.S. Constitution. And so today we're not going to be heavy on Scripture today. We're just going to look at the founding document, and we're just going to look at each section and talk briefly about those sections. So I'd like to start with the preamble of the U.S. Constitution. So it's on page 2 of your notes. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." So I would encourage all of you at a later time to download the U.S. Constitution and compare these notes to the U.S. Constitution. But the preamble of the United States explains the purpose or the intent of the document. This is the why of the U.S. Constitution. Notice that the Constitution is in place to protect the people and their inalienable rights that come from God. Notice that the Declaration of Independence set the tone for the U.S. Constitution. Many said, well, why isn't God mentioned in the U.S. Constitution directly like God is mentioned in the Declaration of Independence? It's because one document flowed out of the first document. And then we also looked at evidence that this document is a Christian document in the sense that it says it was in the year of our Lord, assuming that all life and all time revolves around Jesus Christ. The other thing is when we looked at how bills become law, it is assumed that the president would not be working on Sundays, and that there would be church going that would be in place, and our president was expected to be a person of faith. So if we looked at the preamble, it is the why. The reference to a more perfect union, that refers to the Articles of Confederation that were in place right after we won the Revolutionary War over the English. This replaces the Articles of Confederation. So the U.S. Constitution's purpose is for the following. Point A, to improve and replace the Articles of Confederation. 2, point B, establish the rule of law, because a nation that's ruled by the rule of law should be a nation that's fair to everybody. It doesn't matter. Everybody should get a fair trial. Everybody should have their day in court. Everybody should be judged by the same measuring stick, no matter who we are. We know that is not the case, and many times, especially now, if we look at the current situation, political situation, we see a lot of lawfare. But that is not the intention of our nation, or the way the judiciary is supposed to function. Point C, to create peace among the people. We all want to live together and get along, right? Point D, to maintain an army. Our nation needs protection, and our government should secure our protection and secure our borders. Also, point E, to promote the general welfare or the goodness of the people. So government is in place to ensure that we're able to live good lives, to protect us. Point F, to protect our inalienable rights that come from God to every generation of Americans. Notice it said to our what? Ourselves and our posterity. So they assumed that this document would be in place as long as America is a nation. And last point, point G, to make the U.S. Constitution the law of the land. So it states very clearly the U.S. Constitution is the highest law of the land, and all other laws flow or bend to the U.S. Constitution. So right after the preamble, we get to Article 1. And Article 1 teaches us about the first of the 3 branches of government. Our first branch of government is called the legislative branch. And we have a bicameral legislature, which means we have a 2-house legislature. We have a House of Representatives, and we have a Senate. So the House legislature in Section 1, if we looked at the U.S. Constitution, teaches us that our Congress would have 2 bodies. Section 2 defines the House of Representatives. That's known as the lower house of Congress, and it establishes a few minimum requirements for a U.S. representative, like a 25-year-old age limit. I wish there were more 25-year-olds that ran for office. I think that one of the problems of our nation maybe is that people are in office forever and ever and ever and ever. And if we had a multi-generational legislature, we might have better laws that work for the people. Notice that this document is for the people, not for political parties. Did you catch that? It's for the people, because we are a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It also establishes, Section 2, that the people themselves will elect the members for 2 years. So we elect a representative government. This is why we are not a democracy. We're a Republican form of government, which means that we are governed by representatives that represent our voice. That's the intention, at least. The members of the House are divided among the states proportionally according to size, and giving more populous states more representatives than less populous states. And the leader of the House is called the Speaker of the House, and that person is chosen by the members of Congress of the lower house. Section 3 talks about our Senate. It defines the upper house of the Congress as a Senate. And again, it establishes some minimum requirements, such as a 30-year-old age limit. I think there are plenty of U.S. senators that have aged out, in my opinion. I'm not an ageist person, but I think that we should have a multi-generational legislature that represents the people. Not to be too political here, but we mentioned about the national debt in the last session. And I think if there were younger people that understood the debt situation, they would not be signing up for generations and generations of young people paying taxes paying off the national debt. We're just kicking the can down the road to our children and our grandchildren. But if young people were in the House and young people were in the Senate, or younger people in the Senate, they would understand the generational impact that we have from just borrowing lots and lots of money that could, at some point, maybe even bankrupt this nation. Senators were originally appointed by legislatures of their state, so that means state legislatures in the original document used to elect the Senate. But that's changed. We elect our senators now at the state level. This section also introduces the vice president, who is the leader of the Senate, called the president of the Senate. And the vice president does not vote unless there is a tie. So those are the sections of the legislative branch, 1 through 3. Section 4 determines each state may establish its own methods for electing members of Congress and requires that Congress must meet at least once a year. When I was studying, I thought, wouldn't it be great if they only met once a year? They would do much less damage to us in some ways. Section 5 says that Congress must have a minimum number of members present to meet. They must have a quorum. Also, they can be fined for members that don't show up and don't do their job. They get paid to do a job. It says that members can be expelled and that each house must keep a journal to record the proceedings and the votes, and that neither house can adjourn without the permission of the other. They have to decide that they're going to adjourn a session of Congress together. Section 6 says senators and representatives will be paid for their office, for their service out of the office of the Treasury. Senators and representatives cannot be arrested in session, so you just can't barge in and arrest a congressperson or a senator. And they cannot be arrested in their coming or going to the legislative session. So they can't be hijacked on their way, but they can be arrested they cannot be arrested for free speech or unpopular debate. That's one of the guarantees in Section 6. They can say anything they want on the floor of Congress. They can't be canceled when Congress is in session. That's what the U.S. Constitution says. Also, they can be arrested for treason, a felony, or a breach of the peace. But I think that's important to point out. They can't be arrested for an unpopular opinion. And they can't be arrested for free speech. I think that's very important. They will only be questioned about their conduct or positions in Congress, except in Congress. They will. That's where they can be challenged on the things they say or the information they bring. Section 7 explains how bills become law. First, for any bill raising money, such as taxes or fees, it has to start in the House. So anytime somebody wants to raise our taxes, it has to start in the lower chamber, and then it has to go to the upper chamber. All bills must pass both houses of Congress in the exact same form. So the lower house can't draft a bill and then the Senate change it. They have to vote on the same exact wording on the same bill. All bills must pass in the same form. Bills that pass both houses are sent to the president, and he can sign the bill, in which case it becomes law, or he can veto the bill, and the bill is sent back to Congress for negotiation. If the vetoed bill passes by 2/3 majority, the bill becomes law over the president's veto, which is known as overriding a veto. Another thing is a president can ignore the bill, and after 10 days, with not including Sunday, that bill becomes law. Section 8 lists the specific powers of Congress. The power to establish and maintain an army and a navy, to establish post offices, to create courts, to regulate commerce between the states, to declare war, and to raise money. When was the last time our Congress declared war? And some of you in the room went, ha! It also includes a clause known as the elastic clause, which allows any law necessary for the carrying out of any of the previously listed powers. So this law, laws can be changed to guarantee those things happen, if that makes sense. Section 9, moving on, places certain limits on Congress. Certain legal items, such as suspension of habeas corpus. How many of you know what habeas corpus means? It means you have to be charged with a crime in person. And then bills of attainder, that means declares a person or a group guilty without trial. You can't be declared guilty without a trial. I think this is important for us to know that our Congress people can't be tried like that, and neither can we. They're supposed to protect that right. So if you get charged with a crime, they have to charge you in person. They can't just decide to say that you're a criminal. They have to tell you to your face. At least they should be telling you to your face. The other thing is that they can't declare you guilty. The other thing is they put limits on ex post facto laws. That means they can't declare anything previously legal that was previously legal behavior illegal and charge them with a crime afterwards. So let's just say, I don't know, driving a gasoline-powered car is legal, but then it's illegal 3 years from now. And then they're going to charge you with a crime that you drove a gasoline-powered car. They can't do that. We'll take questions at the end for the sake of the recording. And turning over to page 4 in your notes, no money can be taken from the treasury except by duly passed law, and no title of nobility, such as prince or marquis, will ever be established by the government, because we're a people where everybody is made in God's image, and we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people. It's one of the great things of America. In theory, we should not be a caste system. We should not have elites ruling over us. Everybody should have equal opportunity in this land, and everybody has a shot to run for Congress. Everybody has a shot to participate in the political process. Everybody has an opportunity to start businesses, to prosper, to live their life in a way that God would lead them. Section 10, it limits states. It prohibits states from several things in Section 10. They can't make their own money. They can't declare war or do most of the other things prohibited by Congress in Section 9. They cannot tax goods from other states, nor can they have navies. So that's because we have a federal government that does those things. The states don't need to do those things. So that has a little bit to do about the legislative branch and what they're charged with, what they can do, what they can't do, and the liberties and freedom that they secure for the people. Article 2 talks about the executive branch. That's the branch of the U.S. president and vice president. Section 1 sets term limits for those two offices as 4 years. And presidents are elected by the Electoral College, which has one vote for each member of Congress. This is important. There's been a lot of talk in recent times, in our times, of abolishing the Electoral College, because they say, well, in the instance of President Trump, he lost the popular vote in 2016, but he won the Electoral College. And so people look at that and said, well, this guy's not that popular. And, it's a travesty that he won the presidency when most people in the United States didn't vote for him. Well, the reason we have an Electoral College is because the founding fathers wanted to protect the rights of the minority opinion. And if you look at the United States, most people still live in population centers. If we had just simply a popular vote, that means that New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, maybe Dallas, Texas, big cities determine who's the president. But what about smaller states that might even be less populated than New York City, like a state like Montana? Now they have no voice in who's going to be their president. So we have an electoral college to protect the opinion of the minority. So that means that presidents have to win at a local level. And I think that's important, because if presidents are have to win at the local level, that means everybody has a voice. We don't have a tyranny of the majority. That's very, very important. The founders were very brilliant in saying we need to protect at least the opinions of minority positions or minority thought. Everybody has the president and the vice president, that ticket has to win at the county level. And when we look at the presidential night, what do we see? All the tallies for what? The states and the counties within the states. And that's how our president is decided. I like that. I think that it's good because the population centers of the United States shouldn't determine how the rest of the country lives. I think that, and it's important for presidents to win at the local level. I think that's great. It establishes a minimum age, 35 years old, to run for president. I'd love to see a 35-year-old run for president. Doesn't it just sound so young? You know? The president is to be paid a salary, which cannot change up or down for the duration of the office. So he can't get a raise and then decide to take that raise while he's in office. Section 2 gives the president important powers. Number 1, he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the militia or the National Guard of all states. He has a cabinet to help him or her. Number 3, the president can pardon criminals. Number 4, the president can make treaties with other nations. And 5, the president picks many of the judges and other members of government, all with the approval of the Senate. So the executive branch has quite a bit of power to lead and guide the nation the way they see fit. That's why I think why it's important to really vote for a president understanding all of the issues, understanding who that person is, and then making a wise choice between the person we think is going to best support this document and best represent us. Moving on, Section 3 establishes the duties of the president. The president is to give a State of the Union address, to make suggestions to Congress, to act as head of the state by receiving ambassadors and other heads of state, and to be sure the laws of the United States are carried out. He is supposed to defend the U.S. Constitution. Section 4 talks about impeaching the president, what needs to happen to remove a president. So now let's look at the third branch of government. So we started with the legislature, we went to the president, the executive branch. Now we're going to talk about the judiciary. Section 1 establishes a Supreme Court. It's the highest court in the United States. It sets the terms for judges of both the Supreme Court and the lower courts. And here's the guideline. They serve as long as they are on good behavior, which usually means for life. No justice and only a few judges have ever been impeached. That's important because I think that we should have a judiciary that's protected from impeachment. They should be impeached if they are treasonous, have felonies, things like that. But for the most part, I think it's important to protect the judiciary from that type of action because we want people that feel secure so their decisions aren't based on people's opinion, but based on the opinion of this document. I think it's very important. Section 2, it defines the types of cases that can be heard by a federal judiciary and which cases the Supreme Court may hear. That's called original jurisdiction. And all other cases heard by the Supreme Court are by appeal. It also guarantees trial by jury in a criminal court except impeachment. And it defines the crime of treason. Section 2, I think, is really important because we have federal court, and then we have civil court, and then we have state Supreme Courts. We have county courts. I think that is good for us that we have a federal judiciary that doesn't meddle in the states. That we have county level county level courthouses. That we kind of that we judge our criminals, we judge our civil trials at the local level. I think it's very important because if we look at really how we as Christians could create a lot of change really quickly. We start at the local level, and we're a bottom-up government. We're not a top-down government. At least we shouldn't be. If we look at the way this document was designed, everything is supposed to happen at the local level, and the federal government is there just to guarantee our freedom. I think it's very important that we get back involved at the local level, run for city council, run for school board. Those of us that are equipped and qualified run to be a judge at a county level, run for sheriff, all those types of things. So now we move on to article number 4, and it's going to talk about states' rights when we get to article number 4. So article 3 was about the judiciary. Article 4 is about states' rights. It mandates that all the states are going to honor the laws of other states. If you're married in California, you're married in Texas. If you're married in Arizona, you're married in New York. That those types of laws are all honored by all the other states. If you have a driver's license to drive in Tennessee, you can fly to Ontario Airport, get off the plane, rent a car at the airport, and you're a legal driver in California for the time that you're here. That's important because that guarantees freedom of movement, which is guaranteed in our U.S. Constitution. Section 2 on page 5, if we turn the page, Section 2 guarantees that citizens of one state be treated equally and fairly like all the citizens of another. I think that's important. I don't think that has happened in our past. And that was really one of the potent arguments of the civil rights movement. They appealed to Section 2 in Article number 4 and said the rights that we have in New York, we should have in Mississippi. The rights that we have in California, we should have in Alabama. Everything should be uniform. We should have all the same opportunities to live our lives in peace and in prosperity. Also, notice if a person is accused of a crime and goes to another state, they need to be returned to that state for trial. They can't just flee to another state and be a fugitive. There was a clause in the original document that dealt with fugitive slaves, and that has become null and void at the end of the Civil War. And again, another proof that we probably should have fought that battle right here, right up front in the founding of the nation. But also, we should also notice that we've been able to correct what's bad, what's wrong in our U.S. Constitution. Section 3 addresses the admittance of new states and the control of federal lands. And Section 4 of Article 4 establishes a republican form of government. That means we're a representative republic, not a straight democracy for all states. So we can't have the tyranny of the majority. Now, what's interesting in California and other states is that we have what's called a jungle primary. And that jungle primary excludes the minority opinion. So at this round of March 5th primaries, there may not be opposing political parties on the same ballot. In the general, we may see the same type of thing, where we won't have the opportunity to vote for one party over the other. We'll simply have to vote for either candidate of the same party. I think that's another important thing to point out, is that we're supposed to have a republican form of government, not a tyranny of the majority or a straight democracy. So Article 5 talks about amending the U.S. Constitution. We're not going to spend a lot of time there, but we'll move on to Article 6, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, talking about states' rights. The U.S. states under the U.S. Constitution will honor all debts incurred previously under the Articles of Confederation. So our country owed some money at the end of the Revolutionary War, and so we weren't going to skip out on our debts. Because we're an honorable people, they said, whatever debts have been incurred under the Articles of Confederation, we're going to assume those same debts and pay them off. Notice that there's fiscal responsibility built into the document. I think that's important to point out. Article 6 says that the U.S. Constitution is the law of the land, and all officers, both federal and state, swear an oath of allegiance to the United States of America and the U.S. Constitution. Most of these people swear on a Bible. Another remnant or another indication that we're a Christian country to be governed by a Christian people. I think that's important, and I think that we have that tradition, but I also think at this point it might be blasphemous for somebody who doesn't love God, for somebody that doesn't care about God, or even concerned about what God likes, or even believe they're under his authority, put their hand on that Bible and swear to uphold the U.S. Constitution and pledge allegiance to the United States. To me, that might be blasphemous or borderline blasphemous, and I think that's a terrible thing. Article 7 details the methods for ratification acceptance of the U.S. Constitution. They had to vote on it. Of the original 13 states, 9 had to accept it before it would officially go into effect. So more than a 2/3 majority. So now we're going to get into the amendments of the U.S. Constitution. And we're going to look at the Bill of Rights, which are Amendment number 1 to Amendment number 10. Those are what's called the Bill of Rights. And these are the ones that are important to us, that guarantee us the inalienable rights that were talked about in the Declaration of Independence. This is what that looks like. So if we look at Amendment 1, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That means there will be no state church, that Christians will be free to worship the Lord as they see fit, as the scriptures are revealed to them. We wouldn't have a state church, and government does not regulate religion. So we are protected from government meddling. That is the original intent of not establishing of a state religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So that means when they made laws that we couldn't assemble or worship during COVID, those were against the U.S. Constitution, Amendment number 1. Or abridging the freedom of speech. So we should be able to say anything we want, when we want, with certain limits. Like I can't yell out, disaster, fire, something like that and cause harm. But I should have freedom of the press. We should be able to criticize our leaders. We should be able to write opinion papers. We should have opposing opinions and debate those opinions. We believe that the people are smart enough, the founders believed that the people were smart enough to have debate and determine what is true and right based off of debate. That the people are smart enough to govern themselves. They don't need government to govern. Government is there to protect us and our rights. And the only way to know truth is to what? Be able to tell truth, or to be able to debate ideas, or to say the things that we want, even though they might be unpopular. We have the right to say them. The right of the people to peacefully assemble. And I think that's very important too. We've always had a healthy level of protest in this country. What we saw with riots and burning and looting, that's not peaceably assembling for the redress of grievances. We should be able to peacefully assemble at the Capitol, at our state capitals, at our county courthouses, wherever, to state our opinions and say, you need to address that as our representatives. That's an American right. And I think that's important, not to break the law, but to have the voice of the people heard. Amendment number 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, there's some debate on what a well-regulated militia was, but I think the clearest explanation is that at the time of the Revolutionary War, at the end of the Revolutionary War, it was really a people's war. It was fought by the farmer, it was fought by the pastor, it was fought by the merchant, and it was fought by the farmer. And so all of those people had arms. They assembled in city, county, district militias. Men got together and said, we're going to fight and resist British tyranny. And so it's, in its natural sense, the people were the army of the United States, or at least the people were the defenders from foreign invaders and breaches of the Constitution and tyrannies. Now that means very different things now, but so far, for almost 250 years, we've been able to have firearms. And we know in World War II, one of the reasons that the Japanese Empire decided not to invade the Western United States was because we were an armed people. Yeah, and one of the things I think that has kept government from tyranny in the United States is the people are armed. And I think that in this day and age, there are probably some wisdom in certain types of gun control. But according to this document, we should be able to bear arms for self-defense to protect our cities, our counties, our states, and to possibly even change the government by revolution if we needed to. Amendment 3, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a matter prescribed by law. So the army can't show up to town and say, the army, we're going to put soldiers in your house. That's what the British did. And that was one of the outrageous things that was in the Declaration of Independence. I saw in Massachusetts, some of the state legislature is saying that those of you who have extra rooms in your house should take in refugee migrants. If they make that law, that is a direct violation of Amendment 3 in principle. Maybe not in purity, but in principle. The government can't tell you who to house in your house. It's because we're a land that respects private property. Private property comes from God. You have private property, and to violate your private property is to assault God's blessing on your life. This is how the founders thought about it. This is why you can keep and bear arms to protect your property. Amendment number 4, the right of the people to be secure in their persons. Now, this is important. So I'm going to spend a little time here on Amendment 4. The right of the people to be secure in their possessions, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effect against all unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, support by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. How many of you have been stopped at a drunk driving checkpoint? This is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. You have the right to travel from your house anywhere you go and not be asked for your papers. We'll take questions at the end. We should be secure in our email exchanges. However, with the Defense Authorization Act, the federal government has every single one of our emails, has every single one of our text messages, and has our entire search history on the IP addresses that are registered to us. A direct violation of the Fourth Amendment justified by the War on Terror. The National Defense Authorization Act is a blatant misuse or a blatant disregard for the Fourth Amendment. We also, if a police officer asks to search your car, he has to have probable cause. If he asks to search your car, you should probably say no. He's violating your Fourth Amendment. He could say, well, I have probable cause because I smelled alcohol or I did this or that. But really, at the end of the day, there has to be a reason. And if they're going to issue a warrant on your house, they have to describe what they're looking for and where they're looking for it, and they have to have some kind of witness to corroborate it. They can't just barge in and go through your underwear drawer. They have to know exactly what they're looking for. What about the search and seizure laws with the war on drugs? A direct violation of the Fourth Amendment to impound your property before you're even charged with a crime. So there are a lot of things that are happening today that the Founding Fathers would be turning in their graves over. How about the guarantee for due process, Amendment 5? That's what Amendment 5 is, the guarantee of due process. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless a presentment or an indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in the time of war or public danger. So that means that we have the guarantee of due process, that there are certain rights that we have when we're facing a criminal trial. Notice that those things change if there's martial law. I don't know if you noticed that. It says, goes on, it says, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. So you can't be charged for the same crime twice. You can't be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of the law. Again, illegal search and seizure, impound your car, take your car before you've even been convicted of a crime or accused of a crime or indicted. That's against the law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use. They just can't take your private property and go, we are going to build a park on it. We don't like your house. We're going to take it. And without just compensation. So if the government takes your property, they have to pay you the fair market value for it. Amendment 6, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right of a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed. Notice that crimes are to be tried at what level? The local level. And it should be in public. And it should be a speedy trial. Which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. I love this because this makes America's judiciary system great, because we are able to have a defense attorney to speak on our behalf. We're able to call witnesses that oppose. We're able to present facts and positions concerning our case that determine different outcomes. If we move on to Amendment 7, that's in suits at common law, where the value of the controversy shall exceed $20. So this is just about civil law. There's a differentiation between the type of criminal trial and a civil trial. Amendment 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. They cannot torture us. If we're arrested, they can't torture us to get information, and they can't levy heavy fines on us to punish us unduly. Amendment 9, that's the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. It basically says, it states this, that other rights aside from those listed may exist, and because they are not listed doesn't mean they can be violated. Does it make sense? Like, we have rights that aren't listed here. Those rights can't be violated because this is the first 10 amendments are the spirit of those rights. Amendment 10, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. We have a limited federal government, and I think that's important to point out. Any power not granted to the federal government belongs to the states or to the people. So the next set, these are amendments that are post-original. Amendment 11 clearly defines the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. They had some kind of controversy about that. So they needed to define on what types of cases the Supreme Court would see or hear. Amendment 12 redefines how the president and vice president are chosen by the Electoral College. The Amendment 13 abolished slavery in the United States. Amendment 14, the Civil War Amendment, ensured that all citizens of all states enjoyed not only the rights on the federal level, but on the state level too. It also removed the 3/5 counting of slaves in the census. So every person, no matter who they are, has the same value in representative government in the United States. Amendment 15, race cannot be a criteria for voting rights. Amendment 16 authorizes the United States to collect income tax without regard for the population of the states. Amendment 17 shifted the choosing of senators from the Senate to the people of the states. Amendment 18, that was prohibition, outlawed alcohol. This amendment was later repealed. Amendment 19, women's suffrage, ensures that gender cannot be used as a criteria for voting. So ladies, you can vote and run for political office. I'm glad for that. Amendment 20 set new start dates for the terms of Congress and president, and talks about the deaths of presidents and how before swearing in should be handled, who would be the president if that president died before being sworn in. Amendment 21 repealed the 18th Amendment. And Amendment 22 makes term limits for the president and vice president. Amendment 23 grants the District of Columbia, or Washington, D.C., the right to 3 electors in presidential elections. Amendment 24 is the no tax to vote. You cannot be charged a poll tax to go vote. You can vote without paying any fee. Amendment 25, the line of succession of the presidential power. That means if the current president is incapacitated, who's the next in line? Amendment 26 ensures that any person 18 or over may vote. Amendment 27 requires that any law that increase the pay of legislators not take effect until after an election. They can't just vote themselves raise after raise after raise after raise. So those just a high view of our U.S. Constitution. And that concludes our time together. And thank you so much for being here. And we'll see you for session 4.